Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Hopefully, folks are here today to attend an informational session and a public hearing for Consumers Energy Zeeland Generating Station. My name is Jennifer Dixon, and I'm going to be moderating the meeting tonight. And also, I will be your hearings officer when we get to that portion of the evening. Got a few things to go through before we actually end up getting into the informational session. So I will walk you through a few things here in just a minute that are related to housekeeping and a little bit of how the meeting is going to go tonight, and then we'll get right into things. All right. So the first thing I want you to know is that your lines will be muted during the meeting. We are going to be recording this meeting, so if you have to jump off early or you want to come back and look at it later, you will have the ability to do that. We will be sharing the recording a little bit later, probably the next couple days or so. Wanted to let you know that. If you want to ask a question either during the informational session or even when we get to the comment period, we'll talk about how you can put a comment in through the question and answer box, but you're just going to want to use that question and answer box at the bottom of your screen. You can type in a question anytime you want to. We're going to hold the questions until the end of the presentation, but sometimes it's easier to get those questions out as we're going through the presentation. So please feel free to do that. Once we get to the question and answer part of the night, you will be able to raise your hand virtually and we'll be able to unmute your line so you can ask your question verbally if you'd like to do that. I don't see that we have anybody calling in at the moment. We've got about 14 people on right now, and I don't see anybody calling in at the moment, but if we do, I'll make sure to remind folks how to raise their hand through their phone by pressing #2. Very easy. So how things are going to work tonight, we have this kind of set up almost in 3 different parts. So we're going to be doing the informational session, which you will hear from Air Quality Division staff about a little bit about the Air Quality Division, about the proposed project, things like that. Then we'll be getting right into the question and answer. So be in that first part of the night, the informational session, the question and answer, we're hoping to have a little bit of discussion, some dialogue. Obviously, we'll be responding to any questions that you might have. And then we're going to work into the hearing part of the night. So the hearing will start at 7 o'clock or as soon as we're done answering questions, whatever comes first. Just a reminder, and I'll remind people later about this as well, because we tend to forget, but during the comment period, when we're doing the actual hearing, we won't be responding that you might have at that time. A lot of times people, when they're commenting, they might ask a question in there. That's totally fine. We just won't be able to respond to your questions during that part of the night because those comments are those official comments for the record. One of the things we also like to talk through really briefly before we get started is our group norms. So these are things that hopefully set the stage for how the evening is going to operate. We actually developed these group norms with a group of environmental advocates from the Flint area. So we've been using these the last year or so, and we find that they've been really helpful for our meetings to kind of go smoothly and for everybody to be on the same page about things. So just to walk through these really quickly, one of the things we really want to encourage you to do is to listen actively with an ear to understanding. Ask questions and definitely request clarification. That's why we do the informational session and the Q&A. Make sure that we're criticizing ideas and not individuals. Communicate respectfully. That's going to really help us be all on the same page when we're trying to get that information out to you and have you guys let us know what you're thinking about things. And then take space, make space, and that's just making sure that everyone who would like to has the time to ask questions or to speak. Quickly, an agenda for the night here. I'm going to run through it, but the first thing I want to do is if I can just have my staff turn their cameras on for just a minute. I want to make sure I'm introducing everybody that we have with us this evening. So the first person I want to introduce you to is Janelle Trollhill, and Janelle is going to be the main speaker you're going to hear tonight. She's also the permit engineer on this project. So hopefully, we'll be able to kind of hear from her and she'll be able to help answer some questions at the end as well. And then I also have Laura Martin. Laura is the inspector for this facility, so she'll be available once we get to the question and answer. Folks have questions for her. Chris Etheridge is our decision maker, so he's our assistant division director. You won't be really hearing from him tonight, but you will be seeing him when we get to the hearing portion. He likes to stay on for the whole meeting just to hear, what kind of questions people have. And obviously the comments are going to be really important because they're going to be part of what he considers when he makes a decision on this project. And then, although she doesn't have her camera on, helping us in the background tonight is Caitlin DeVries. She's with our environmental support division, and she's awesome at making sure that our tech works properly and we're all good to go. So Laura and Chris, if you guys want to turn your cameras off, go ahead. Janelle, I'd just leave yours on because I'm going to get to you in just a second here. So like I mentioned, we're going to go through this informational session. We're going to do a very short presentation on the air quality division in general, a little bit about the permitting process, just to make people understand kind of where we are with things. Those not familiar with this sometimes have questions about, how does the whole process work? Janelle's going to go over briefly what the company was requesting in their permit application, and then what an air permit kind of entails, what it looks like, things like that. Then we'll get right into that question and answer session. Like I said, we'll take your questions either via the chat box, or not the chat box, I'm sorry, the question and answer box. I know there's two, so we want to make sure we're using that question and answer box, or you can raise your hand and ask those questions verbally. And once we get to 7 o'clock, or potentially a little bit before that, whenever you guys are done asking questions, we'll get right into that hearing portion. After the hearing, we will talk a little bit more about how you can submit official comments on the record. You do not have to submit your comments this evening. There's still time. The comment period doesn't close until December 16th. So we have some other ways that you can submit comments, and we will definitely encourage you to use those as well. And so we'll talk about those. Also talk about where you can find other information. So if you're just hearing about this project, or maybe you're kind of new to this and you want to be able to dig deeper, maybe get your hands on some of the more technical information, we'll tell you where to find that as well. And then we'll also get you Janelle and Laura's contact information if that is helpful. So I think it's going to be a great night tonight. We're going to have a lot of good information, but I am going to go ahead and pass it over to Janelle. As soon as you are ready, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
No problem.
Good evening, and I thank you for the privilege of your time tonight. My name, as Jennifer had said, is Janelle Trohill, and I'm the lead permit engineer for the Consumers Energy Zeeland Generating Station air permit application. I worked with a team of air quality staff to review this application. Now, before we get into the details of the project, I would like to talk about what the Air Quality Division does and how the permitting process works. Air pollution comes from many different sources, including power plants, fuel burning vehicles, landfills, and various industrial sources. The overall mission of the Air Quality Division is to protect public health and the environment. We provide this protection by using our authority under state and federal laws through the regulation of industrial sources. Now, what do AQD staff do to protect air quality? We do a lot of different things. We monitor levels of air pollutants. We look at toxic air contaminants to make sure public health is protected. We conduct inspections of facilities like the Zeeland Generating Station. And we review applications and write permits for sources of air pollutants to make sure that the proposed projects comply with the state and federal rules to protect public health. Now, I'd like to point out a few things that the draft permit does not cover and we are not able to regulate. These include zoning, noise, and traffic on public roads. If you have any questions or concerns about these issues, we will want you to talk to your local government. Now, when it comes to evaluating comments received for a permit application, it's important to hear the opinion of residents. However, we cannot base our decision on whether residents support or oppose the project or believe it is necessary. We have to evaluate the project to ensure it meets the applicable air quality rules. If the project meets those rules, we are required to issue the air permit. To make sure a company is meeting all the rules and regulations, they need to follow a permit to install for the equipment. I'd like to give you a very simple overview of what the air permitting process. So first, a company decides that they want to install or modify or construct a piece of equipment that would be a source of air emissions. Then the company would put together an air permit application and submit it to the Air Quality Division to review. Once we receive the application, it is assigned to an engineer like myself to decide if the request can meet the state and federal air quality rules. During the review, other air quality staff are involved to help with the different parts of this review. This includes the review of toxic air contaminants, also called TACs, and how the emissions may impact the surrounding community. If these rules are met, the engineer creates a draft permit. If public comment is required, as is in this case, the draft permit is posted for the public to comment on. Public comment is a very important part of our permitting process, which is why we're talking with you tonight. Once the comment period ends, we evaluate any and all comments received. The comments can lead to changes in the permit and the final decision. And finally, a decision is made on the permit application. This decision could be to approve the permit as written, approve the permit with changes, or to deny the permit. This decision is based on whether what the company wants to do can meet the air quality regulations. So, what exactly is the company requesting? They are wanting to install upgrades to the existing simple cycle turbines. These upgrades include what is called an advanced gas path and an axial fuel staging to the existing simple cycle turbines. These will help to produce more electricity and improve the fuel efficiency of the turbines. This includes upgrades to components such as the combustors, nozzles, and the turbine blades. And then also, it will be an upgrade to the combustion technology where the fuel is injected at different points in the combustor to be able to allow better combustion. As I said, both upgrades will improve efficiency, power output, and also operational lifespan of the turbines. So now that we've talked about what Consumers Energy is requesting, let's talk about how we review a permit application. When reviewing a proposed project, the permit engineer works with other air quality staff. This review includes looking at all the state and federal rules that apply to the project, evaluating the proposed air emissions against the rules that apply. This includes checking the emission calculations thoroughly. An air toxics review to make sure that the TACs can meet AQD's health-based screening levels, and air modeling for criteria pollutants and toxic air contaminants when needed. A permit is a legally enforceable document with a list of requirements called conditions. The company must comply with these conditions. The requirements in the permit ensure that the project operates as described in the application and by the way that it was reviewed by myself and the rest of the AQD permitting team. A permit has requirements such as emission limits, material limits, proper operating parameters for control devices and any other equipment, testing for most pollutants, and any associated monitoring, record keeping, and reporting to demonstrate compliance with any of those limitations. The district will conduct inspections to determine if the company is complying with the conditions in their permit. And I will pass it back to you, Jen.
All right, awesome. Yeah, thanks for walking us through that. I appreciate it. Laura, if you want to turn your camera on, we can get right into question and answer. I don't see any Q&As in the chat right now, but that's okay. We'll give everybody just a minute here to type anything in that they might have questions on. As a reminder, if you would like to ask your question verbally, we're more than happy to have you do that. You're just going to want to use that raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen. And again, we don't have anybody calling in. I just want to double check here. Nope, we don't have anybody calling in, so I will keep an eye on that. So we'll just give everybody a minute or so. I don't want to jump into the hearing portion too early, but if no one has any questions, we're also happy to do that. So, oh, looks like we've got a question. All right, thanks for just 1 second here. So the question is, Janelle, I'm going to ask you if you can answer this one. And if you can't, we might have to get back to the person because we don't have anyone from our monitoring section on the call right now. But the question was, where is the nearest air monitoring location? And is the prevailing wind west to east? Or it might be a statement, prevailing wind is west to east. So just to, not sure if you know that or.
I don't know offhand. I am trying to find our map currently to see where the closest monitoring station is.
Yeah, no, that's okay. While you're looking at that, just for folks to know, and maybe Caitlin, you can help put this in the chat. We did just update our air monitoring map. So we've got kind of a new one, which is probably why Janelle's like, where did it go? So we do have a new updated map. It has a lot of great information on it. So Caitlin can share that in the chat for us in a couple minutes here, and we can look through that. So one of the other questions is, what are the health impacts of the pollutants? So again, we don't have our toxicologists on tonight. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't for these kinds of meetings. But one of the things just to remind folks is, and Janelle kind of talked about this in the beginning, the rules and regulations that kind of are the umbrella over all the things that we do in the air quality division when it comes to permitting our health-based rules and regulations. So they are written to make sure that they're as health protective as possible. So when we're talking about the different pollutants that we know will be emitted from a facility like this, like Janelle said, we have to make sure that all of those pollutants will meet those standards. And if any of them would not meet those standards, then the permit would not be able to be issued as it was requested. The company would have to either look at different ways of asking for that information. They might have to change a process, things like that to make sure that those rules and regulations are met. That is the intent of those rules. So it is really, really important. Yeah, and Mark actually pointed out that the closest monitoring station is listed in the fact sheet, so that's really helpful. I know Caitlin can kind of share that fact sheet as well with us. There was a question also that came through about, what do we know about the water impacts will there be a water meeting as well? So we're not going to be able to answer that question at this meeting tonight, but we can definitely find out if there's going to be any, water related meetings to this. I don't know that they would necessarily be required to have something like that or not, but we'll definitely find out and we can get back to you. We have your email address, so we'll be able to get back to you. Okay, so this is another thing that's a little bit out of the scope of air permitting, but definitely a great question. The question is, what is the consumer's energy emergency plan for this location? Is there a plan to alert the public if there's any issue? That's something definitely that we would have to get with the company to ask about, and we can do that and we can get back to you on that as well. All right, yeah, thanks for all the great questions. Appreciate it. Yeah, appreciate folks asking so many questions. This is great. Janelle, were you able to pull up that monitoring station for us?
Yes, the fact sheet says that it's the closest one is in Ottawa County.
Okay.
And that was where the data, I believe, was pulled for modeling.
Okay, perfect. And do we have anything in the fact sheet about how far away that station is? And that's something we can definitely find out a little bit more. There was air modeling done for this permit, so just a little brief on air modeling. That's where we basically use a computer simulation to say, like, this is what the company is asking for. These are what we expect the emissions to be based on what they're asking. What kind of impacts will there be? And some of that background information is pulled from those air monitoring stations to use in the model as well. So do you know, does it have any information about how far away that is or no?
I don't see that it is stated in the fact sheet of how far away it is.
Okay. We can definitely find that out and get you that information as well. The air modeling information, there is a little bit about it in the fact sheet, but the model results themselves aren't, it's not that they're not public, they're just not posted anywhere. So if you were interested in looking at the air modeling results, you would want to do a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, and we can send a link to that as well. Or maybe if Caitlin, if you have a chance, you could pop that into the chat if you have a chance. I know you're busy in the background there too, so thanks for helping out with some of that stuff. We did find out there shouldn't be any water related impacts, so at least at this point, if that changes or if we find out something different, we can report back on that too. All right, so give folks just another minute or so to see if there's any other questions that are coming in. Okay, well, Caitlin shared the fact sheet in the chat. Caitlin, thank you for doing that, and also how you can submit a Freedom of Information Act request and where the monitoring locations are. So thank you, Caitlin. That's awesome. I really appreciate you sharing those links. So those are going to be in the chat if you want to grab them out of there. Let us know if you have any other questions on that. And like I said, I will share Janelle and Laura's contact information after the meeting. And the questions that we weren't able to respond to tonight, or that were a little bit out of the scope of, the work that we do here in Air Quality Division, we'll try our best to get you some answers to those other questions, and we should be able to just email you directly. All right. I just want to make sure that if we have any other questions, we give people a chance. So I'm going to give another minute here, not to say anybody has to ask any more questions, but I just want to make sure that we're going to be giving ample time. All right, well, seeing none, I think we'll go right into the hearing portion of the night. So Laura and Janelle, thank you so much for being available on the panel. In case there is questions, much appreciated. You guys can go ahead and turn your cameras off if you'd like to. Chris, thank you. You're on top of it. All right, so he's got his camera on. He's going to be listening through to the hearing portion of the evening here. So a couple things that we need to do before we get started. One of the things that I'd like to just talk a little bit about public comments. A lot of times we get questions about what kind of comments, are acceptable to comment on, what kind of comments might make an impact on a final decision, things like that. So what I want to just tell folks is everyone is free to comment on anything that's in the permit. Everything is open for comment. There are definitely comments that are more likely to lead to changes. So comments that are focused on the rules or the content and basis of the draft permit, things that are going to be request specific changes be made, that's going to be more likely to lead to changes in any final decision. Comments that are least likely to lead to changes are going to be things that are, outside of the scope of the proposed permit. Janelle kind of talked a little bit about some of those. We'll go over some of those again when we go through the opening statement to get ready for the hearing. But those things are going to be, the easy ones are going to be zoning, truck traffic, noise, light pollution, things like that are out of the purview of our set of rules and regulations that we write air permits under. And then also whether or not a community is in favor or not in favor of a proposed project going forward. So just want to talk a little bit about public comment before we get into the hearing. So that's really, hopefully will be helpful to you when you're trying to formulate your comments. All right, so the public hearing gets started with sort of a formal statement that kind of sets the ground rules of the hearing. Once we get past that statement, we'll just invite folks to raise your hand if you'd like to make a comment verbally tonight. You can also make a comment in the chat or in the question and answer box by just typing the word comment and then typing your comment out. That's completely fine as well. Like I mentioned, we will go over other ways that you can submit comments after this meeting if you'd like to. So I'm going to go ahead and just read the opening statement, and then we'll get right into hearing comments. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this public hearing. My name is Jennifer Dixon. I'm with the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, or EGLE, and I will be the hearing officer tonight. Chris Etheridge, Air Quality Assistant Division Director, is the decision maker for this permit application, and he'll be listening to your comments this evening. He will be considering all comments before making a decision. This hearing is related to a request from Consumers Energy Company Zeeland Generating Station located at 425 North Fairview Road in Zeeland, Michigan. The request is for upgrades to the existing facility. The Air Quality Division regulates sources of air pollution to minimize adverse impacts on public health and the environment. The law governing those responsibilities is Part 55 of the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act. Before installing and operating new equipment, the company must obtain a permit that complies with Michigan's air quality laws. The equipment must meet state and federal standards, including health-based ones. The permit will include emission limits and operational conditions to ensure these standards are met. Tonight's hearing allows public input on the draft permit, which is still under review. No decision has been made yet. Your comments can help determine whether the permit is approved or modified. However, we can only consider comments within our authority and cannot address concerns such as zoning, traffic, or noise concerns. Support or opposition to the proposal will be noted, but the law does not allow us to base the decision on public opinion. The hearing is being recorded and your comments will be considered in the decision-making process. The public comment period, which began on November 6th, ends at midnight on December 16, 2024. After the comment period closes, all comments will be reviewed. Significant air quality related comments will be considered, and the decision maker will then decide whether to deny, approve, or approve with amendments. If approved, the final permit will include any changes from the draft along with the reasons for them. In all cases, interested parties, those on the mailing list, commenters, and hearing attendees will be notified of the decision by mail, including a letter from the decision maker and, if applicable, the approved permit. Our staff is here to ensure that a fair opportunity for you to express your views on the proposed project and listen to your comments. You do not need to comment tonight to have your input considered. Written comments can be submitted via US mail, email, or voicemail during the comment period. I'll explain how to do this after the hearing. If you'd like to comment tonight, you You may comment verbally, or you may type the word comment into the question box. Each verbal comment will be limited to about 3 minutes, and I'll notify you when you have about 30 seconds left. I'll call on those who have indicated they wish to speak first. After that, anyone who wants to comment can do so, even if you didn't register to comment in advance. So we didn't really have anyone who wanted to register to comment in advance, but if we have folks that would like to comment, this will be the opportunity to just raise your hand. And I just want to double check we don't have anybody calling in. All right, so you should just be able to use that raise hand icon. So I see that we've got Jay Holtz. So Jay, you should be able to go ahead and make your comment, but if I would ask you to state your name and any affiliation that you have for the record before you start your comment.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. My name is Jacqueline Holst, and I am public. I live in Zeeland. So I feel like it's important to state that this location, the Consumers Energy Zeeland Generating Station, is next to a hospital. So when I think of a hospital, I think of sensitive population. And when we talk about air pollution, we know that there is negative health impacts. So I feel like being next to a hospital, it's very important to understand the toxins. And I haven't had time, I apologize, to check the maps that were sent of the nearest air monitoring, but in my understanding, it is not in the direction of the wind, which coincidentally the hospital is. So I feel like if this permit was to put more toxins going towards a sensitive population, then we really should require a monitor in the area or at the hospital to let those sensitive populations know that maybe now isn't the time to come into the hospital or go out of the hospital, because they will be breathing that air. That leads me to my second point. Second point is an emergency plan is so important for the community, especially considering the hospital that's right next door. So I feel like an emergency plan should be required of Consumers Energy to alert the individuals that may be sensitive to an issue. Would be phenomenal, in my opinion, to have real-time public available air monitoring at Zeeland Hospital or in the wind direction from the Zeeland Generating Station. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comment. We really appreciate that. Just going to give folks another minute or so to make sure nobody else has a comment that they would like to lodge tonight before we close the hearing out. So I'll just put it on pause for a minute and make sure nobody else would like to make a comment. Okay, Chris, I'm not seeing any other comments. Are you okay with us closing the hearing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just going to read a quick closing statement and then we'll go over a couple other things before we end the meeting tonight. So thank you so much for participating in tonight's meeting and for your interest in protecting Michigan's air quality. As mentioned at the start of the hearing, the public comment period closes at midnight on December 16th, 2024. All interested parties, including those who commented or attended the hearing, will be directly notified of the final decision on the proposed permit. So the hearing is now closed. Thank you again. All right, so just a couple other things before we get going tonight. So how can you submit an official comment if you didn't tonight? Or even if you did submit a comment already and you'd like to submit another one, that's also completely fine. So you can submit those comments by mail by email or by calling our public comment voicemail box. So a lot of people like to use the voicemail box, which is great. You can just call, you know, type your comment out or write it out ahead of time and call and leave it on our voicemail. Hopefully that saves people some time too with putting things in the mail. So any way you would like to do it, we take the comments that you would like to give. How can you find other information? So I know Caitlin shared a lot of great information in the chat. Hopefully you had some time to grab that. I know one of the commenters talked about the new air monitoring maps. There's some really great information on there. There's also some historical information about pollutants that have been monitored in the past just around the state. The monitor that we are looking at is in Jenison, and it's about, you know, between 10 and 15 miles away from the facility, which is pretty typical when we're using monitors for background information like this. We want to look at like that regional information. So I'm happy to talk more about that with folks as well if they're interested, but we've got a few pieces of information on this webpage. One of them is the proposed project summary. That's going to be a very high level overview of what the company is asking for, some about our review that we did, some of the things that we looked at. The technical fact sheet is going to dig a lot deeper into the rules, the regulations, how they're applied, how we looked at the proposed emissions, things like that. The proposed permit terms and conditions, those are exactly kind of what they sound like. Again, those are all, everything in there is open for comment, everything in those proposed permit terms and conditions. We will also post the link to the recording of this meeting, but we will share that out via email with folks that attended tonight. And then, oh, sorry, I got a little fast in my clicking, apologize. If you would like to talk to Janelle a little bit more about the proposed permit, that's completely fine. Like we mentioned, Laura, she didn't get to talk tonight too much, but she is the inspector for this facility. She's in our Grand Rapids office, and so she would be responsible for doing those air quality inspections out there, and not only ensuring that the company is in compliance with their current permits, but if this permit is granted, she would be responsible for making sure that the company is complying with that one as well. If there's ever a pollution emergency that you are seeing or that you want to get more information or you want to file a complaint, you can always call our pollution emergency number, and that's on the screen as well, and it's 800-292-4706. So with that, thank you so much everybody who took time to meet with us tonight. We really appreciate this. I know you've heard it a couple times, but public participation is a really, really important part of our process. Public comments often lead to changes in permits. And so, like I mentioned, we do really appreciate folks taking the time out of their busy schedules, especially around the holidays, to participate in this. So thank you again. And Caitlin, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and end the meeting for us.